Hey everyone, I'm Coach Chippys and I've been a professional top laner or head coach for the past 8 years. During this time, I've reached Worlds and MSI multiple times. Now, I'm a full-time coach with a ton of passion towards helping players unlock their potential and climb to their dream rank. What's going on, guys? In today's guide, we're going to be going through everything you need to know about how to learn and master Rumble. And I've had a few requests to make a guide on not just Rumble specifically, but also an AP champ in general, because I strongly recommend to all my students and also any top laner that you need to have an AP champion in your pool, because you might find yourself in a scenario where your mid and your jungle, regardless of what you want to play, they might just play an AD champion, and if you were to play an AD as well, your team comp's going to be very terrible. But if you have a strong AP champion in your back pocket like Rumble, you can save the day. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to have Rumble in your pool as one of your weapons. Alright, let's kick it off with the rune pages. And the first page we're going to be going through is the Comet page. And I recommend you take this on Rumble in the majority of your games, because it really helps Rumble gain a lead in his laning phase, which is really part of his identity. He's such a powerful laner, and this page is the strongest he can take to gain a lane advantage, so I recommend this more often than not. And there's also some very good runes in the blue tree that he needs. First one being Nimbus Cloak, because if you take Ignite on Rumble, which you should be doing very often, the extra move speed from Nimbus Cloak really increases the threat you can have on the opponents, because a lot of you may know Rumble, when you overheat in melee range, even though you can't use spells anymore, you're so powerful, and the extra movement speed you'll get from Nimbus can help you stick on your opponent. Now for the second page, the second rune, it will be either Celerity or Absolute Focus. And I recommend Celerity versus basically range champions or matchups where the move speed is very important. So versus Akshan, Jace, Teemo, champs that are going to try kite you out, Celerity is quite powerful. And Absolute Focus is better in more of the stat checky matchups such as Renekton, Jax, where if they jump on you, you want to have as much pure stats as possible to win that all in. Now, the last rune is not negotiable. You should be taking Scorch, even though Absolute Focus does outscale Scorch, of course. You're not playing Rumble to scale. You're not playing Orianna. You're not playing, I don't know, Kayle. You're just trying to dominate your lane phase. So taking Scorch will help you with that, and I recommend it every time. And for your secondary, you're going to be running Resolve. Now, I have seen some Rumbles take Domination. However, I feel this rune is much better for mid lane Rumble, where you can proc the Treasure Hunter a lot more easier because you can roam and impact the map a lot earlier. And for top lane, an isolated 1v1, where getting ahead or behind is a lot more punishing, you want to be taking Resolve and maximizing your laning power. Now, in Resolve, you're going to be deciding between Second Wind or Bone Plating. And Bone Plating is of course better versus all-in melee champions such as Jax, Darius, Garen even, champs that can't proc it unless they're right next to you. And second one is better versus range champions or even melee champions with range abilities such as Gangplank. Now for the second rune, you're going to be running either Revitalize or Unflinching, and of course you'll run Unflinching if you need the tenacity, but I feel Revitalize is quite powerful and underrated on Rumble because it makes your W give you extra shields every single time, and later on in the game, when you've got some HP items, now with the new W scaling, the shield's quite big and Revitalize makes it even bigger. You're actually quite beefy if you were to run this rune. However, if you do need the tenacity, then Unflinching will outperform it for sure. Now we're going to be moving on to Rumble's second page, the first strike page. However, in my opinion, this page is better suited for higher elo brackets, and if you're in, let's say, Platinum and below, I'd recommend just running Comet every time. And my reasoning for this is that the times you take first strike are versus tank champions, such as Ornn, such as Sion, where you're going to win the lane anyway, so you might as well maximize how much gold you get from taking first strike. However, if you're in a lower elo bracket and you verse an Ornn or a Sion, they're most likely just going to fight you anyway, or even if they don't, you can gain an advantage quite easily versus them because they're going to make so many mistakes. But if you're to verse an Ornn in Challenger or even Diamond, for the most part, if they're a comfortable Ornn player, they are going to minimize how much damage you do to them, so even if you run the Comet page, they're going to be playing very passively, and if you were to run First Strike instead, even if they play passive, you can farm gold off them. But in the lower brackets, there's a very, very good chance they're going to play in a way where you can kill them, and Comet will help you accomplish that. Now, that's not the case every time. If you find yourself playing mini games versus tanks, and they are playing extremely safe, and you're unable to kill them, which is very unlikely, you can take First Strike. It's still really good in those situations. I just recommend for lower elo brackets to run Comet and just maximize how much damage you can do in lane. Now moving on down the tree, the first rune you're going to be taking is Perfect Timing, and I strongly recommend you never take free boots on Rumble, because Rumble wants tier 2 boots very early on in the game, and if you're to run free boots, you won't be able to buy them for 12 minutes. Even if you get kills, and it excels how fast you can get your boots, you're still not going to get them as fast as you'd like. So for that reason, you'd run Perfect Timing. Now, the second rune is either Futures Market or Minion Dematerializer, and in the past I would say only run Futures Market as the rune was very strong, but they did nerf it on this patch to nerf jungle, so top lane suffered a bit for jungle sins. However, we need to adapt and take Minion Dematerializer in matchups where you might struggle to get push, such as Irelia, who's quite a hard matchup for Rumble. If you take demats, it might help you secure a base where you can demat the cannon and just burn the wave down. And the next rune is going to be Cosmic Insight, of course, one of my favorite runes. You'll be running this every game because it's so powerful, having lower flash cooldown on this mobile champion. And if you're to run TP, very strong as well. And for the secondary page on this tree, you're going to be running Sorcery, and the first rune in that tree will be Scorch, because even though you're playing for gold income more with the first strike, you still want to be excelling in your trades, and Scorch will help with that. And the next rune will either be Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, or Absolute Focus. Now you have three choices, and I'd run Nimbus Cloak if you're running Ignite. Now you might be thinking you'll be running TP every time with Klepto, which is true for the most part, but there are some matchups where you take First Strike and Ignite, which would be, say, Dr. Mundo, where the healing count damage might help you a lot, but you still want to be farming him for money because he's still quite a safe champion. So in that scenario, I'd run Nimbus Cloak Ignite. But for the most part, if you verse All in Scion, you're going to be taking TP, and then Nimbus Cloak's not as useful, and in that case, you'll be taking Absolute Focus or Celerity. Our next topic we're going to be covering will be Summoner spells, and of course the first spell you're going to be taking will be Flash, because if you don't take this spell you're going to be a free kill to any jungler with eyes, and the second spell you'll be taking will be either Ignite or Teleport. Now I recommend taking Ignite almost every single time, and my reasoning for that is Rumble gets push in the majority of his matchups, which means you dictate when you can base in all these matchups. And if you're able to crash big waves and base whenever you want, that means TP is not needed for gaining a lane advantage, and you'd rather have the extra power of Ignite, where it'll help you not just gain solo kills, but you have a lot more threat for if you get ganked, there is a good chance you can 1v2. In 1v, you can kill your lane or the jungler, hopefully both, but even if you make it a 1-for-1, it's a lot less punishing than it would have been if you were to take Ignite and have a lot less threat in the 1v2 scenario. Now, the times I'll take TP are in matchups that they're going to be playing to minimize the damage you can do. So champions such as Ornn and Scion, where they're just going to stack magic resist and hide under the tower and farm and hope to scale up. Or if you take TP, you can look to impact the map early. And the best way to do that is not wait till 10 minutes and then look for a TP. That's very outdated. You want to be running bot out of base or running to dragon out of base as it's spawning and looking to make a play there, drop your ulti down, get involved, and then TP back to your lane. And the reason that's so much better is firstly, you can do it pre-10 minutes, where at pre-10 you can only TP to tower, of course. And secondary, the second reason is even if you're to TP somewhere from top, your lane opponent could follow, and also, even if he doesn't follow, he's going to push the wave under tower, you're going to lose 2 or 3 waves, you're going to lose 2 or 3 plates, and you're going to lose a lot, so that even if you gain an advantage elsewhere, your lane opponent's quite happy. Where if you're to run to that play out of base, make it happen, kill their bot lane, secure the dragon, then TP back to your lane to catch the wave, your lane opponent gains nothing, you impact the map, and it's just a much better scenario overall. Up next, we're going to be talking about item builds. Now, there's a bit to unpack here. However, once you take in this information, it's extremely easy to apply it in the game and know when it's best to buy each item. And we'll start off with the easiest of all, the starting item, where you're going to be going Doran's Ring almost every time. And the only time I'd go Doran's Shield are versus range matchups with a lot of poke, such as Teemo or Akshan, where the regen from Shield's very useful. But other than that, I will just go Doran's Ring and look to dominate your lane as fast as possible. And the most important topic of all, for items specifically, is the first back purchase, where you want to be getting your tier 2 boots on your first recall, because Rumble does extremely well with the move speed, as he's quite short range but has a lot of damage, so the move speed will help you close the gap, and also the other benefits of the boots are very good. So let's say you verse Renekton, for example, where you win every trade, his only way to kill you is an all-in. If you have Ninja Tabbies, he all of a sudden can't all-in you, unless you're playing extremely poorly, but for the most part, if you have Ninja Tabbies and Ignite, he'll never be able to all-in you, so you have a very good chance of winning that matchup. And the same goes for Merc Trades versus Kennen, and the times I'd buy the other boots, Swiftness boots for example, when you base with not enough gold for the others, because Swifties are so cheap, and also where the slow resist is very good. So some examples are Nasus, where the Wither gets really cucked by the Swiftness slow reduction, where it's hard for him to do anything, and Fiora, which is a little bit controversial because you might have wanted Ninja Tabby vs Fiora, but I value Swifties because the only way Fiora is going to kill you is to parry slide on you and proc all the vitals. But if you have Swiftness boots, it completely negates the parry slide, and also you have extra movement speed to kite her out and look to turn on her later on. And for the other items, Sork Boots, I'll just buy this in free matchups where you don't need any of the other boots at all, and you have the 1100, the more money than the Swifties cost, then you can go Sorks. And for Hextech, it's hard, it's just in games where you can't afford Tabbies or Mercs first base and you want one of them. And then Hextech is the next best thing. However, I strongly recommend doing boots every time if you can afford it. Moving down to the first item, I strongly recommend going Night Harvester in the majority of your games, and I know this is going to cause a bit of controversy because there's so many players in League that enjoy crunching the numbers, doing the math, and figuring out which item is best, and they will tell you that Protobout outperforms it later on, which is true. However, thematically, for Rumble as a champion, you want to be doing the majority of your work early game, and as a one item spike, Night Harvester is better the majority of the time. Not every time, but a lot of the scenarios, Night Harvester will be doing more damage for one item spike. And you want to be a part of as many Herald and Dragon fights as you, and any skirmish in general, as you can. And you want to be as strong as possible, because for the most part, Rumble is going to get outscaled, especially in the side lane, by the majority of top lane champions. So you want to be doing your impact early on in the game. There are times I buy the other items, however, and for the times I build Protobout, that would be versus range champions ideally, where the extra move speed and gap closer will help chase them down. And for Demonic Embrace, this item is quite powerful as a first item versus tanks and health stacking champions. So versus Ornstein, of course, tanky champs, it's good, Cho'Gath, and then versus AD bruisers that stack HP, especially champions like Renekton, where he's going to be building Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver, Sterax probably, something like this, where the percentage HP burn of Demonic is going to be very valuable. And not just that, the build path is quite nice in that matchup, because let's say you have played the Steel Caps and Giant Spout, Blasting Wands, something like that, you're going to outperform him in the fight, you're going to be too tanky for him to burst you down, and your base damage is so high anyway, you're going to win the all-in. And also, once it's finished, Gore Drinker vs Demonic, he's just got pure health, you're going to really dominate him. So moving on to second item, if you build Night Harvester, you want to be going Shadow Flame the majority of the time. And the reason for that is because you didn't build Protobout, you don't have any Magic Pin in your build, and Shadow Flame gives you that Magic Pin. It's a very good pair together with Night Harvester. These items are quite strong, and for the most part, it'll be your strongest two item spike on Rumble, especially versus champions with low magic resist. Now, the times you build Protobout second is, of course, if you went Demonic Embrace first, you would always go Protobout second, because like we talked about with Night Harvester, it's very good as a one item, but it starts falling off later on, and it doesn't make sense to build it as a second item. So if you were to build Demonic Embrace first, you'd go Protobout second every time, and then the times you go Demonic second is if you went Protobout first for your range matchup in lane, and then the rest of their comp's quite beefy. They might have a Cassante mid, Sejuani jungle, tank support, where Demonic Embrace is quite valuable, and in that scenario you'd build it. And then the other two items are just situational, where you'd build Zhonya's versus Fed AD champions that are going to dive onto you, such as Zed, Talon, Irelia, a champion you might struggle with, surviving if you don't have Zhonya's. And Banshees is the same versus AP champs, versus a good Syndra, versus a Fed Azir. Banshees can be quite useful, but for the most part you will be building the first row of items. It's just the second ones are situational and they can be really good. Moving on to third item, in a lot of games you're going to find yourself wanting Void Stuff by now, because if you have an AP mid and you're playing quite well top, they're probably going to build MR and you're going to need the Void Stuff to punch through that. And the rest of the items are all situational. Zhonya's of course AD divers, Banshees heavy AP comps. And for Def Cap, I'd build this in games where you don't need the defensive stats. You might be 5-0 playing well, and they might have no threat on you, and they're not building MR. And it could be a lower bracket, or they could just be disrespecting you, and in that case you want to build the def cap and show them up. And then Morello's is just if they have a lot of healing on their comps, such as Soraka, Swain, where Rumble has a lot of AoE spells, which means you're going to apply healing cut to everyone. But I don't like building this very often, because you'll be taking Ignite a lot, which means you'll have a form of healing cut already in terms of a summoner spell. So spending all that money on a healing cut item I don't recommend, but you will need it in some of your games. And fourth and fifth items, all the same scenarios as we talked about before, just later on. And I've got some examples here of full builds of what your build should look like. And something you might notice is you always have, or as I always have, a Void Staff Def Cap in my build. And that's because if you're ever getting to 6 items on Rumble and you don't have Void Staff Def Cap, you're going to do probably 0 damage. These items are the best in terms of late game. So if you don't have them as your 6 item build, it's very bad. However, there may be some games where you don't have them at the end, and then you can always sell an item and swap it out for Def Cap. Up next, we're going to be covering Rumble's abilities and some tips and tricks that will help you maximize their potential. And the first one being is that your Q, even though it shoots out in front of you, if you spin with the right timing, you can actually do relatively even damage spread to everyone around you. And the reason this is important is mainly for wave clear, where your Q range is so short, it's very hard to hit all the minions at the same time. But if you're doing the spin trick, you can. So I'll show you on these dummies, where if you Q and spin back and forwards with relatively good timing, the damage is pretty evenly spread around them. Now, the better you get at this, the more damage you can do in the AoE. However, it's impossible to do it perfectly every time. You just want to have it good enough that your wave clear is good. And the reason it works is because Rumble's Q, it doesn't permanently do damage. It does damage in a tick cycle. So if you're able to spin to that tick cycle, and I'd recommend mucking around the practice tool a bit, then your wave clear damage and your spin damage is going to be a lot higher. And there are some times where this is useful in a 1v2 or a team fight, but that's very rare. It's mainly used for wave clear, and if you can get good at it, it'll help you with getting your wave under tower as fast as possible. The next tip is that you're hitting your E before your ulti ideally. Now in a team fight, you definitely won't have this luxury most of the time. However, especially in laning solo kills, you want to be looking to do this as much as you can. Because if you hit your E, the empowered E, before your ulti, the E lowers their magic resist by a significant amount, which means the ulti is going to do a lot more damage. And another factor is the E slow is a lot bigger than the R slow, and it will prioritize the bigger slow. But that means they're going to be stuck in your ulti with the empowered E slow, which means they're going to be slowed and stuck in your ulti for longer and take more damage from lower MR. And it's just way more damage overall than if you were to lead with R and then try to hit your E. Maybe you miss it, but if you secure the E for hit first before you drop ulti, it's going to be a lot more better, especially for solo kills. My next piece of advice is mainly based on many years of experience playing Rumble, but I recommend for you to normal cast as ultimate. And my reasoning for this is that even though smart casting may be technically faster, with such an important ability, it's important to value accuracy over speed. And another benefit is you see exactly where the initial placement is, which is where the first point of damage is coming from. Which means if you're trying to snipe a 1 HP target, you're guaranteed to get their first tick and execute them. And the main reason I take it, to be honest, even though in the past when I was younger I valued the speed, my mid laner after a competitive match, he saw me chuck it in the bushes where I was smart casting it, and he told me, no, you just have to normal cast it, because my mid laner used to play top, he was very good at Rumble, and after he saw me lop into the bushes, he made me normal cast it, and it's felt a lot more accurate and better ever since. The next piece of advice is for getting back to lane and for getting around the map, where you want to be using your enhanced W as much as you can, because the enhanced W gives more movement speed than the normal W. So if you just start coming out of base with Q, 2 E's, now every time you W, like we talked about before, W will maintain your heat, you'll stay the same Fury, and you're casting W from 50 Fury because you use your Q and E, which means your move speed is higher, which means you're more mobile and you're getting around the map faster. My next piece of advice is use your overheat to help break towers, because the overheat gives you actually a lot of attack speed. So if you're able to proc it when you're hitting the tower in time, it's going to be really good. However, I recommend that you be very careful with this, because if someone engages on you when you're overheated hitting the tower, you're going to have no spells available to defend yourself. This is just for if you killed your lane or you know he's in base and the jungler's not going to come, then you can maximize your DPS to the tower. The next piece of advice is quite important, where if you use your E within a short period of time before overheating, you can actually use a second E while overheated. You don't have to lead the overheat with the first E, but you have to use it within a short period of time. So I'll show you when my W's back up, where I want to Q here, and then I'll EW. My second E is still available, even though I'm overheated, and you have a bit of time to shoot it. You don't have to rush it. You've got a brief second or so to think about where you want to shoot this E, but it's just important because most people expect when you're overheated for you to have no abilities, so if you're able to time your E well, you can actually have one while overheated. Next tip, for a team fight or skirmish scenario, you can actually Q Zhonya's so that your Q is cooking the enemy team while you're in stasis. So I'll show you on these dummies where Q Zhonya's, no one can touch me, no one can target me, and I'm doing the full amount of damage the whole time. Next piece of advice is if you feel like you're going to die if you leave your tower, the jungler's just sitting there waiting to kill you, feel free to ult your wave and just recall. The wave will get cleared by your ulti, you'll get all the money, and you'll be back in map in no time, and the jungler's just completely wasted his time. And for the final piece of advice in this segment, and in my opinion the most important, is that Rumble is all about spacing. And I have a good example here where I'm versus Darius in solo queue, and I burn his flash with my ulti. But from this point, you see his upper level, he's got Stride Breaker. If I were to give him range, he would kill me. He would stack passive, he would dunk my head off. But because I'm keeping distance this whole time, letting my heat go down as well, which is another important part, because if I were to overheat with one spell, it would not be ideal, but in that case I was able to get my W and my E off. Now we're able to kill him. Because I kited out his Q, I dodged his E, I maintained space this whole time, where I was chunking him down with my E's and Q's while staying high HP, basically full HP. They were able to kill him and win the skirmish in a game where my team is losing. Now, it looks like I'm going to die here, but I actually managed to get away. But this outcome is favorable, purely because I went into the fight with Darius, spacing him out. Keeping in mind my champion is good at spacing, but bad at straight up headbutting. So as long as he's not able to stack 5 passives on me, as long as he's not able to hook me, I'll win that fight no matter what. Our next topic is going to be the laning phase. Now this topic's extremely important on Rumble because he has such a strong lane phase, and if you're not gaining advantages in the majority of your game, you're playing the champion wrong. And there are two main ways you can play out your lane, and the first is looking to push with Q start, or letting them push with E start, to simplify it. And in this matchup versus Darius, if I were to try push with Q, even though it could work, it'd be a bit dangerous because my Rengar's pathing down, the jungler's pathing up, and there's a good chance he just ghosts on me and kills me with this Rammus. So I choose to start with E and let him push towards me and try to poke him down as much as I can, and if he doesn't let me poke him, then I'll just last hit with the E. But I was able to get an E off onto him there, and for the most part, I'm putting myself in no threat of dying to his Rammus, because my jungler's going down, he's not going to be useful to me for a very long time. As long as I don't give them an opportunity, he might get something bot, and it's all good. Because even though my champion wants to win lane, I still have to accept reality. My jungler's going down, his is going up, he's playing Ghost Darius. He can just chase me down the lane and kill me very easily if I were to try push, even though I'd be winning the trades. So I let him push towards me, and I'm just doing my best to hit E's on him, or last hit minions with my E. It's pretty simple, there's not much to letting them push, but ideally, you want to make them take a trade that ruins the wave too. So if you notice earlier, I baited him to Q me, and even though it hit, it destroyed all of his minions, so now the second wave is coming towards me. Which is very important, because if I just kept my distance the whole lane and shot E's, he could stack a huge wave 3, and even though they probably couldn't dive me in this game, if he had Elise, for example, they could. But because I made him ruin his wave on the second wave, I'm able to make my wave here, so that I can poke him. I'm standing under tower right now and poking him this whole time, and I'm able to thin the wave with my Q. And basically what that means is I'm lowering the amount of minions he has, so that when they stacks a wave under my tower, it's a lot less, which is a lot harder for them to dive. And also if I thin it enough, I can actually stop him from crashing this wave. So here I'm just doing my best to poke him as much as I can while damaging the minions, but I don't want to damage them too much to where I'm pushing. My Rengar's still trading me off, but I just want to damage it enough that if I were to hit him and go on him, there's not that many minions that I'm dealing with. So here, even though we take a bit of a trade, there was only 4 minions instead of the earlier 12 because I've thinned the wave out, and I can still keep my wave here. And he's even feeling pressured. He went and warded because he doesn't know where Rengar started. So because I saw that he warded, he doesn't know where Rengar is, I choose to play a bit more aggressively, and because I poked him down earlier from having good wave control, I'm able to kill him. And I even get a tasty little sidestep there of his Q, but the main reason I got this Q was not that mechanic, my mechanics, even though that was pretty nice. It was my wave control. I made him hit me on wave 2. I made him Q the entire wave, and I only took about 100 damage, maybe 110 tops, but he destroyed the entire wave, which meant his second wave was pushing towards me, which means it's very easy for me to freeze outside my tower, poke him down, and then get my solo kill later on. My next example, I'm up against an Aurelia, which is of course a very hard matchup, so I choose to skill E and make the lane less volatile, and that's another trick there. You can look to poke the tri level 1 with your E. Even if you don't see them, there's a good chance they're standing in there. And look here, I pull my wave slightly so that these minions all target the same one, which means the wave will come back towards me, which is exactly where I want it, because I don't want to be near her tower versus Aurelia, because she can stack all her passive, hit an E on me, and chase me down the lane. I want the wave to be near my tower, where I can poke her with no threat of being all-in. And because Aurelia is quite weak without passive stacks, I look to bully her there with my E and just a couple autos. Really a good use of my bone plating as well. But now I just really want her to push this wave. And like we talked about earlier, if I can make her push wave 2 much too quickly before wave 3 arrives, it's really, really good. So even though I'm versus Aurelia, I don't have to put pressure on her to do it, because a lot of Aurelias will just queue for fun, just to keep the passives up and just jump around the screen having a good time. She ruins her wave 2, which means now I can freeze this outside my tower, look to poke her down, and luckily in this game, my jungler chose to come up towards me, which means I can use him as a resource to shut her down. So I'm just doing just that. I'm thinning the wave as much as I can, because I know Lee Sin's going to come, we're going to have a brawl, and I don't want too many minions hitting me. And also I'm poking her down as much as I can while trimming the wave. Now here, there's an important tip I want to pass on to you, is that in this scenario, I use my Nimbus Cloak to dodge her E, because even though Lee Sin is coming, and we're going to kill her even if she hits her E, I want to stay high HP. So I use the Nimbus Cloak to dodge her E, so now she has no way of killing me in some games, but in this game just chunking me. And because I managed to stay high HP, I can stay in this lane. I don't need a base now. Because if I were to base now, I wouldn't be able to buy tier 2 boots like we talked about before, which is a base I really love and really value on Rumble. So I want to stay high HP and look to keep pressuring the matchup, but look to get enough money to get my favorite first buy. So now I keep the wave frozen here, so that when she TPs back to lane, the wave stays still perfect for me. I can poke her under my tower and look to pressure even more. And if Lee Sin wants to come again, he can. But basically, I'm just trimming the wave slightly while cooking her down, chunking her down. And eventually, I'm going to look for a solo kill, where Rumble's passive is extremely powerful. And a lot of people underestimate it. But even though you don't have a spell going, the passive itself does so much damage. The extra attack speed, extra damage is just insane for all ins that you can catch a lot of people off guard, especially champions like Aurelia, who in her mind she probably beats you in an auto attack fight. But with your passive, that's not the case, especially early game. And to finish off, I wanted to give a scenario where I push the lane. And in this game, it is a little chaotic level 1. I had to start E, where normally I'd start Q versus Alawi and push her under tower. But in this game, there's a lot of fighting level 1. I had to start E, and my jungler ends up giving Alawi a kill. But that's not a problem. My champion's so strong in lane. And as you saw, I didn't push wave 2 too quickly. I want to stack a huge wave and crash her under tower, because that gives me a lot more options. And I'm just looking to punish her for CS. I'm looking to poke her, and when she starts last hitting, or even stepping anywhere near me, I'm going to look to do as much damage to her as I can. So here, the wave is in a not bad spot, where if she walks up and autos to CS, I can poke her, and for the most part, it's really hard for her to farm without taking damage. Now, what I do after this wave is the most important point of how to play when pushing, because I play in a way that makes her leave her tower. So after I crash this wave, I'll speed it up a little, where I'm still poking her for CS, making the wave hit the tower, or she'll take more damage. And now, see, I pull the wave up to this bush. Now, this is important because the wave is here, his wave is going to come and meet the minion wave before mine. Which means, briefly, there's going to be a scenario where it's 12 versus 6, where his minions are just hitting mine before mine have even arrived. Which means the damage they do in that brief time means it's going to push towards me. So if he does nothing, the wave's just going to come back towards me slowly. If he walks up to CS, I'll poke him. And eventually, as long as I don't use my Q like an idiot, as long as I don't Q the whole wave, it's going to come towards me. Eventually, he'll be outside my tower. And that's a real easy time for me to solo kill him. But here, unfortunately, he doesn't give us the opportunity to showcase it. He just disrespects and he tries to get experience versus Rumble like an idiot. And I'm able to use that opportunity to punish him. As you can see, the strength of this champion just is insane. But even if he traded better earlier, he was higher HP, and I pulled my minion wave like this and made it come towards me, he's still in a scenario where there's almost nothing he can do without the help of his jungler. And that's just based on purely the strength difference in our champions at this point in the game. Up next, we're going to be covering teamfight theory, and the reason I'm doing more of a theory-based segment instead of just like I did on my other guides where I showed examples is because teamfighting on Rumble is very simple. You mainly play front to back and you look to use your ulti as impactful as possible. The biggest part of your job is landing a good ulti, and the theory-based review is more important because I'm going to teach you where you should be for the teamfights and how you should be using your ultimate, and that'll have a lot more impact overall than just me showing a couple reviews of me playing front to back and landing an ulti. The first concept you need to know when teamfighting on Rumble is that the location of the teamfight is the most important. Now, Rumble's ultimate is quite powerful, however, it is quite thin. It's not that big of an ability. So if you're to fight in the middle of the lane, it's very easy for them to space around it. They can go in either direction and escape it. However, if you were to fight in a river fight and you were to ult down this choke when they're coming in, it's very hard for them to avoid taking the damage and getting slowed by it. Now, it's really important to choose your location ahead of time because Rumble doesn't want to be entering into a river or a fight scenario late, because if you don't have vision, it's very hard for you to get your ulti down. So let's say, for example, you arrive to Baron 30 seconds before it spawns and you help your team get vision down. You could bring a pink yourself. Now, when they walk into this area, because if they don't walk in, you can always start Baron. Now, when they walk into this area, you can drop your ulti down this choke where they're going to be funneling into it, walking through your ulti, or if they're running away, it's easy for your team to secure Baron. And there are a lot of chokes like this in the game, but the main concept is you want to be fighting primarily in the jungle when you have ultimate, because any fight in the lane is just too much space for them to play against your champion. It's easy for them to kite you out, it's easy for them to avoid your ulti, but if you're to pick the location well, you can really maximize the impact your champion can have. The next concept is the most simple for teamfighting on Rumble, and that is Rumble's position itself in the fight. Now, the way you want to be positioned for the most part is grouped with your team, just cooking down the front line with your Q and E, and separating them from the back line with your ulti. And the reason you want to be playing like that is because if you try to flank on Rumble, you're not very threatening. Your abilities are such short range and you have no gap closer at all to reach the backline that's very easy for them to space you. However, there are scenarios where you can, if you see the angle. I'm just saying most likely you'll be playing front to back on Rumble. And the times you look to use your flash to kill the backline is if they make a mistake. If they step up and you see a flash EQ angle, or even a flash Q Zonya's angle, where you can be cooking the whole team while in stasis, that can be very impactful. But the standard way to teamfight on Rumble, well, not the super play, just the standard, the most case scenario, is you'll just be cooking the front line and using your ulti well. And the final concept is just that, how to use your Rumble ulti well. Now to break it down for you, there are 3 main ways you can use your Rumble ulti to have a high impact in the game. The first one being is to block the escape route of their backline. Now this works really well versus mobile champions, especially if they don't have flash, but I'll give an example. Let's say you're coming out on map with your team and you want to control top river vision, and you see the enemy Soraka walking here and warding this bush. Because you have such a long range ability, you can actually use your ultimate to completely block this choke out, and now Soraka has to make a choice. She has to walk through this ulti and burn to a crisp, or walk towards your team and get killed. So most likely she'll walk through the ulti, burn down, your team will follow up, be able to kill her, and even if they don't manage to kill her, she'll be chunked very low, that it's easy for you to full control this river. But the main point is you've blocked off her escape completely and made her have to make a choice to turn or to retreat back through the ulti. And that can happen in all scenarios. You could be fighting Dragon here, block this choke out, and now they can't escape back into their jungle. Basically, you're just blocking off terrain. You could kind of even see it like a long-range Anivia wall, where you're just blocking off this section completely and giving them no avenue to escape. The second way to use your ulti, and the most simple, is to follow up your team's engage. Because for the most part, hard engaged champions such as, let's say, Vi, Jarvan, they can easily get onto the backline, but they don't really have the damage to kill them by themselves unless they have 10 kills. So let's say your Vi dives onto the enemy AD carry here, and she just goes through your team, through their team, and onto him. You can follow him up with the ulti, and you can use it to cook not just the guy that your Vi is going on, but the rest of his team as well, so that when they rotate to the Vi to peel him off his AD carry, then they're going to be getting cooked this whole time, and their ADC is going to be getting cooked this whole time. So basically, Rumble, even though he's not a good diving champion, he can really help facilitate the other divers in your team comp. And the final way to use your ulti is if you're versus the dive comp, is to use it as a defensive ult. So let's say you're standing here, and the Vi goes on your AD carry, who's here. You can use your ultimate to start it on the Vi's position, cooking her up, and then bring it back through their team, so that now when they're running through the ultimate, they're going to get cooked trying to follow up their Vi, which means they're not going to have enough damage to kill your AD carry, because they're not going to be able to reach her. And you don't even have to start it on the Vi. If the Vi is overextended, if she's too far away, where if you ulted her or just hit her, you wouldn't want to ulti. So let's say Vi is here, but the rest of her team's here, you could actually use your ultimate to cut off their entry, so they're not able to enter the fight at all. And I wouldn't necessarily put it there, this is just an example, but you want to be hitting as many people as possible with the initial placement, and also making it so they have to walk through it to reach your backline. Up next, we're going to be going through Rumble's matchups. Now, something you might notice right off the bat is that Rumble has a lot of free or Rumble-sided matchups. And that's just because right now he's very, very powerful in the laning phase, and there's not a lot of champions that can beat him. But the champions in skill matchup and hard tier especially can be very punishing if you make a mistake. So a good example of that is versus Riven, where if you die to her once or die to a gank and she gets to kill, there's a good chance she just runs the rest of that lane, because she has so much all-in threat that if she has higher stats than you due to getting a kill and a level lead, you're going to really struggle. And the champions in the hard tier are the best at capitalizing on that. Aurelia, of course, can just Q to a minion and ult to you, and you'll probably die if you're behind. And Warwick can ult you, Ringo can always get onto you. These champions are very punishing if you make a mistake, but if you play very, very well, you can win against any champion in this tier list. So starting off with the hard tier, now in these matchups I would definitely take Ignite against all of them, because they have a lot of healing and they have a lot of all-in threat, where maximizing your all-in threat is very important. And I would also try to get Ninja Tabbies on your first base, because even though these champions all-in threat is quite high, early game they're not much of a problem. Rumble can actually win against all these champs very early on in the game. Warwick might be a bit tougher, but in terms of the other two, as long as you start E and let the wave come in towards you and poke them down, like we talked about in the laning section, you'll be fine. And if you're able to get to plated steel caps before first base, it's very, very good for the matchup. And in terms of the skill matchup champions, these matchups are, I would say, even though they're skillies, they're still in your favor. Rumble is just so strong right now. These champions just have a lot of ganks set up, most of them, or they have the ability to trade with you quite evenly, such as Jace and Akshan, where it's hard for you to get onto them. And if they choose to, they can go into you. So it's basically just a battle of range versus those champs. If you hit your E's or they hit their skillies, and then whoever gets low enough is in threat of dying. But the melee champions in this list have a lot of gank setup and ability to close the gap against you. So it's very important versus these champions that you're aware of what the enemy jungler is doing at all times and ward accordingly. Because if they were to get a kill, let's say Olaf, Riven, Tryndamere get a kill versus you, it's a lot easier for them to just pop their Summit Flash or Ghost on the next sequence and just run you down the lane and kill you. So it's important you stay even or ahead of basically at all times as Rumble, but especially versus champions that are higher up on this list. Now for the Rumble side of matchups, to be honest, there is a slight difference between some of these champs and the rest. I did try to put them as best as I could in order of easiest to hardest, but for the most part, you should be winning these matchups. The problem is versus champions like Renekton, Jax, Camille is similar to the other tiers where if they get ahead and they can all in you, it's quite hard for you. However, they're a lot easier than the other champs because, especially Jackson and Camille, they need Divine Sundra before they come online. And by then, you should have a noticeable advantage in the lane phase. And Renekton is just a bit scary because if you make a mistake with your heat management, if you overheat in front of him or underheat, he can win it all in against you. And for the rest of the matchups, they're pretty straightforward. You should be able to get push or let them come towards you, poke them down, and you should have full control of the wave. And especially versus the tanks where you take Klepto, it's quite easy for you to farm gold. It's just very scary versus some of these champions where if they get a lead from using the jungler, they can chase you down, such as Darius, Fiora, Renekton. So you need to keep that in mind at all times. I'm just saying in terms of pure 1v1, you should be winning all of these matchups. And for the free matchups, these matchups are quite easy. That's why they're in that tier. However, it's important to know what layout you want to take. And what I mean by that is versus, say, Vladimir or Gangplank, for example, you'd still want to take Comet and Ignite and maximize your kill threat. Because even though they're quite easy in lane and you might want to help your team, these champions scale extremely well, so you want to be maximizing your chance to shut them down, to kill them in lane, make them lose CS, make them lose XP, and take them out of the game. But when you versus a champion like Sion or Shen, it doesn't really matter if you kill them or not, they're going to do the same job, so you want to be taking TP and Klepto, maximizing your money, and playing to impact the map as much as possible. The next topic we're going to be covering is Rumble's identity. Now, a large part of Rumble's ID is that he's extremely powerful in the early game, which means that's when you should be doing the majority of your work. Because if you don't, you're going to get outscaled so hard in the side lane and just run down by any champion you verse in solo queue. Fiora, Jax, Camille, any champ like that, they're going to destroy you in the side lane, even if you win lane, which means you need to either have carried the game or have had a large impact in the game before that point. And to do that, you need to be gaining a lead in lane and being as part of as many fights as you can. And a good timer to do that is if you're to base at 530 cannon, crash it under tower, recall. You can run back on map with tier 2 boots, you can run straight mid, head to dragon, and force a fight there, and still make it back to top in time. Now, I wouldn't tunnel on that. Not many people play for dragon on spawn, but if you see an angle, you can take that. It's just the mindset you need to be in, is trying to be as a part of as many early fights as you can. And the most consistent way you'll be doing that is by forcing Herald. So you want to be warding it at around 7:45, 8 on before 8, because enemy jungler could rush it if you ward too late, but you want to be securing Herald for your team. Because you want to be stronger than your lane opponent most of the time, and you should be able to win Herald fights due to your advantage. You should be able to keep him stuck under tower, maybe even chunked, and make it so any Herald fight is in your favor. And even if your jungler doesn't use Herald in your lane, he's going to use it somewhere. He's going to gain an advantage for your team that you can secure with your strength. My next point, we just briefly touched on it, is that Rumble is an extremely weak side laner. So the way you impact the game is not from pushing your wave under tower, bashing the tier 2, poking them under it, none of that. You're way too vulnerable to any form of 2v1 or even a 1v1 later on in the game to be trying to win like that. What you want to be doing is resetting the wave to even and looking to be a part of as many fights as possible. Now that's not to say you can never push it under tower. There are a lot of times where it is good to do that. It's just the times where it is good is if your lane opponent's not there and it's free, or there's no threat of you dying and there's no other play for you to make. Then you can push it under the tier 2 and make them answer it. What I mean is that if he's in the lane pressuring, you don't want to be pushing it all the way and keeping him under tower, because you want to be a part of as many fights as possible without putting yourself in risk of dying in the side. So resetting it to even and using that timer to rotate and see if a fight breaks out, and if one does, you're a part of it. If one doesn't, you're back inside to catch the next wave, but you don't want to be playing side lane majority of the time. If your lane opponent has left the side lane, that's good. You want to be fighting against him, basically. You want to be with your team, him versus his team. That's the best case scenario for you. The times where Rumble struggles the most is when he has to keep answering a strong side lane champion. But if that doesn't happen, then it's really good for you. Just fight as much as you can. The next point is that even though Rumble is extremely powerful in his lane, he is very vulnerable to ganks. So you need to play to freeze outside your tower, like we covered in the lane phase section, or to 1v2. I see a lot of people, when they play Rumble, they get ganked and they're trying to run away and they end up dying anyway, where when I pause at the start of the gank, I see, okay, he can 1v2 this easily, which is something I want you guys to practice. When you get ganked, you need to be able to register straight away, okay, I can't escape this, I can't run away, I'm going to turn and try kill someone, and you play accordingly. And the final point, we touched on being a part of every fight, but something I really want to hammer down is that the main way you're going to be securing the win as Rumble, ending the game, is by getting Baron for your team. And you want to be getting it as fast as you can, because if you take too long to get Baron, let's say you get it at 30 minutes, whatever side lane champ you're versing is going to be a problem by then. The Jax, Fear, Camille, whatever, they're going to have Hydra, Sunder, and Hullbreaker by 30 minutes, and then it's going to be very, very hard for you to even lane against them, even catch waves against them. But if you have to secure Baron at 21, when everyone's around 2 items, they're not going to be a problem. They're going to be too squishy to fight. They're going to be not strong enough to break towers in front of you. So it's not going to be a problem at all as long as you can have discipline and play for Baron. You see Baron's coming up, you know, okay, I'm going to reset my wave to even, or maybe I've got a time to push it. I'm going to rotate to this Baron, get full control, and look to force a fight because I'm at my strongest. Now, this won't happen every time. There'll be times where even if you're strong, your whole team's so far behind you can't get Baron, and then that's not ideal for Rumble, but that's reality. But in a normal game where everyone's pretty even or your team's ahead, you want to be securing Baron for your team with your strength. Up next, we're going to be covering drafting for Rumble. Now, Rumble in solo queue is an extremely good blind pick, but if you do just want to spam Rumble and you want to ban what's best for your lane, you should ban Irelia, because if you're not able to secure an advantage by 6, you're going to have some trouble against her. So when Irelia is banned, you can pick Rumble whenever you want, but if it's a champion in your pool and you want to pick it in good scenarios, I'll go through some basically green flags of when it's good. And that is when you have hard engage on your team, because like we talked about earlier, you want to be following up the hard engage with your ulti and giving them the extra damage needed to execute the backline. And some really good champions to play with are Jarvan or Vi. Those are the two best for jungle. But there are a lot of AD diving junglers. There's Wukong, you know, there's not just those two, but I found that they are the best, so Jarvan and Vi. And for mid, it is nice to have an AD mid, but it's not ideal. But if you had a champ like Yone, that's the best of both worlds, a diver and AD, that's really good. But it doesn't have to be necessarily, it's just a champion that can dive is best. Even if it's a Kali, it's not ideal because they can build more and magic resist, but it's still fine. You're still going to have enough damage to kill the backline, even if they build MR. So for the most part, any diving mid is good, but not necessary as long as you have some dive in your comp. And then AD carry, doesn't matter, it can be anything, but I found Rumble feels really good with Ashe and Varus because you can synergize the ultis together. If you see your Ashe or Varus hit an ulti, you can follow up with yours and they'll cook the whole time they're stunned in it, so that's pretty good. But I wouldn't tunnel on that at all, the AD pick, it doesn't matter that much, it's just a bit of quality of life. And then for support, any champion with hard CC is mandatory. I really hate playing Rumble with some enchanter like Lulu, Janna. It feels very, very useless. You want to have ideally a champ like Nautilus who has a point-click ultimate. That's really easy for you to follow up with, but it can be any hard CC support at all. Now we'll move on to the champs on the enemy team that Rumble loves to verse, and we'll go through them now. So for top lane, it's of course one of the free matchups we talked about before, and ideally you'd verse a free matchup where you have kill threat on them. So a Kali, GP, Shyvana, a champ like that, who's doesn't have much form to get away from you, but there are some free matchups that aren't as ideal, like Dr. Mundo, even though the matchup itself is very free, it's pretty hard for you to kill him consistently if he's just farmed from far away. So we'll just put a Kali down, and then jungle, ideally you want to play versus a champion that has to farm early game, so can't pressure you. So versing a champ like Rek'Sai would be a way harder than versing a champ like Wukong, who has basically no gank threat on you at all. He has no CC, his dash range is not that long, you're not going to be under much threat of dying at all. And then for mid, ideally you'd verse an immobile mage, because once the fights start kicking in, your ulti is going to have a lot more impact if you're versing a champion such as Orianna, who can't really get out of it very well, compared to if you verse a champion like LeBlanc, who's going to look to flank and just poke you down and annoy you during the whole fight. And for bot lane, it's the same as mid. You want to be versing a mobile champion such as Ashe. Very good to play Rumble versus Ashe, Jhin, Varus. Champs who have no form of really getting out of your ulti well. And also they just don't do that much damage in general if they were to get onto you, so you do have angles to flash onto them. Where when you verse a champ like Kai'Sa, she's quite mobile and it's quite easy for her to follow up dive onto you, and it can be a lot harder to land a good ulti on a champ like that. And for support, you do like versing at mobile champs too, like Janna, Lulu as well. But support, it doesn't matter too much because all supports are pretty immobile. You just don't want to verse a support like Pyke that's going to roam top very often if he knows what he's doing and make your life hard. So, for example, if you verse a support like, let's say, Soraka, not much you can do. You're just going to drop your ulti on their heads and the whole backline's going to cook up. Next, we're going to go through the champs that make you not want to play Rumble. And starting with your team, you almost never want to play Rumble with an AP jungler. So if your jungler picks Elise or Nidalee, I'd almost never pick Rumble in this case. Because your lane opponent, if they have eyes, they're going to stack magic resist and you're going to have almost no kill threat on them. And the chance you win a Herald fight is much lower if you have too much AP topside and they have MR. So that's for jungle. You ideally want to have an AD jungler, non-AP. And for mid, you don't want to be playing with AP mids that basically don't want to be doing anything early game. So a Seraphine is a good example, or a Xerath, where they're just going to be farming for the most part and trying to get their Ludens without anything happening. That's not what you want to do on Rumble. You want to have the most impact as early game as possible. So if you have a Xerath and they have some roaming mid, it's going to be really hard for you to do that. And for bot lane, it doesn't matter as much. As mainly supports, you don't want to be playing Rumble with enchanters, of course. And for AD carry, yeah, it doesn't matter at all, basically. You can play Rumble with any ADC, so mainly you just want to be looking at your jungle and support, to be honest. Mid is the least of the three, that's a problem. But mainly jungle and support dictates if Rumble is good or not. Now for the champions that the enemy team can pick, that'll make you less likely to pick Rumble. For top lane, it'll be, of course, be the harder matchup. So Aurelia, Rengar, champs like that, where if they get a kill, they can start farming you because they have so much mobility and threat on you that it's really hard for you to get away from them. And for jungle, it'll be champs that'll help these champs. It'll be champs with a lot of early threat on you. Ideally, Rek'Sai would be the hardest to verse, but even Elise, champions that have very strong level 3 gank or dive, quite difficult to verse for Rumble. And for mid, it'll be champions that want to be roaming, because Rumble wants to be playing very aggressive in his lane, and if you're versing a roaming mid, let's say Talon, it can be quite hard. He's just going to roam up and take you out, and especially if he's got a kill or two by then, it's almost impossible for you to survive him. Now for bot lane, you don't want to be versing hyper mobile AD carries that can get out of your spells quite easily. So Kai'Sa, and she can also follow up dive onto you and make you quite easy to kill. And for support, it'll of course be hard engaged champs that can threaten you. So champ like Leona could be quite problematic for Rumble because she can snipe you with ulti and then go onto you. And if you're ever out of position, she can flash on you. And basically any other hard engaged Rel as well. Just these are sorts of the champs that you can see that'll make you less likely to pick Rumble. But for me, bot lane is not much of a factor. It's mainly the top jungle mid, because if I see this top jungle mid we got on the screen now, I'm not going to play Rumble. There's a very, very high chance they're going to kill me and block me from what I want to do, which is carry the early game. Okay, up next I'm going to be going through a full game example where I'm playing Rumble in solo queue versus an Ignite Aurelia, which is of course quite a tough matchup. And I'm going to be talking you through my thought process throughout this entire game, and hopefully that'll help you have a better understanding of when you play Rumble. So in this game, unfortunately, my Jarvan is starting blue and pathing down, which of course, pathing down to the Karthus lane and not the Rumble Irelia lane is quite a big mistake, but that's reality. So because I know he's doing that, I choose to start E and let the wave come back towards me, and just look to poke him and poke CS, or like get CS as it comes in, and hopefully stay as high HP as I can. Because not only is my jungler pathing down, I'm versing Ignite Aurelia, and I don't have TP, so if I ever take a poor trade and I'm low HP, I'm not going to be up to base and TP back to my lane. So definitely staying high HP is my top priority, and secondary priority is to just poke it as much as I can and thin the wave. However, versus Ignite Aurelia, it is quite tough to thin the wave, so I'm just trying to get as much CS as I can and hopefully get some poke down on him. And luckily this guy messed up his wave 2 slightly, so I'm not going to miss any XP, which should never happen anyway. But if he played very well, I could be under threat, but he chose to cheat a recall, which is fine because he has Ignite and he doesn't want to be stuck in the lane either. And now that he's cheating and coming back to lane, he's going to have an item advantage over me. So because I know that, I could have either pushed this wave here and based and been Amtome Rumble, which we know we don't like. We want to be getting tier 2 boots on our first buy. So I choose to slow push this wave. I want to build as many creeps as I can so that if she chooses to all in me, I'll probably win. But if I push too fast, my buy is going to be bad and there won't be enough minions that will help me win the fight against her. So now the waves are stacked together and I'm just pushing as slow as I can. And when she comes back in, I'm going to look to start trading on it. Because when you cheat her, you're going to be level 3 and you're going to get back, and initially you're going to be down a level. So I can use that time to look onto it if she tries to walk up and get CS or XP. But she kind of respects, not really. She takes a bad trade here. I take it back. And yeah, she should have stood really far back and wait for herself to get level 4 before she walked up. But now that she is chunked, I can play my lane more aggressively. So I'm looking to poke her under tower here and just get as much damage down as I can before she is in a position to all in me. But now that she's the same level as me, I do have to respect slightly. But I do see Kane a dragon and Jarvan is on my side, so I'm fine to take some even trades and just get her as low as I can. But now that I've been taking some good trades and she's low enough, she's in lethal range. But I'm not able to kill her, am I? She's under her tower, so I want to be playing my lane in a way that will allow me to kill her, which means I want the wave to come back to me. And now that this cannon has hit the tower, and she has a lot more minions than me, and she even eased these caster creeps and clears them, now the wave's coming back to me. If you see here, she has about 9 creeps to my 6, 8 or 9 creeps, and the wave is going to push back towards me. So if I was to play aggressive now and queue her and all the creeps, it would ruin my freeze. So I'm sitting far back even though I win the all-in and just looking to poke her down when she goes for CS, but eventually when my wave is in a better state, I will look to kill her. And here that's exactly what happens. She goes for the creep and I look to all in her as her jungler comes. And as we talked about before, when you get ganked, you don't want to be running away. You want to be looking for the 1v2. Not every time, but a lot of the time, because if the jungler's running into your lane, you're probably in a gankable position, which means you should be trying to basically fight it out. So now from this point in the game, I've got an advantage. I've solo killed the Aurelia and I've gotten my favorite buyer, the tier 2 boots. And of course I go Tabis this game because they have triple AD topside, but even if they're an AP mid, I'll still go Tabis versus Aurelia basically every time. And they have Aurelia Kane, which makes it even better. So my 1v2 potential is quite high in this game because I've got Tabis versus double AD top jungle, and also he's playing Kane, which, like we talked about in the drafting section, you love versing these farming useless junglers, you hate versing high gank pressure junglers. And Kane is not going to do anything to me until he gets form, and by then I should have had a high impact on this game, if I'm playing my champ right. So now the wave was coming back towards me, he lost a lot of XP because I based as it was slow pushing towards me, and now I can get level 6. And this is a point where I'm going to be looking to play quite aggressively because I'm basically invincible with ninja tabbies, and also I've got ult advantage over her. So if she walks up to try get CS, I'm going to look to play very aggressively, and I'm pretty sure that's what happens. Yep, he has to farm really far back. He's not playing the champion that it wants to be played. Aurelia does not want to be sitting 2 screens away farming with EW. She wants to be playing aggressively, but because I'm holding my wave in this state, he can't play his champion the way he wants to. And now the wave will eventually slow push towards him because I didn't really have much of a freeze. I only had 3 creeps, 3 casters, which you can never freeze indefinitely. You can only freeze for a little bit. And now I'm just looking to slow push again, build a big wave and punish him if he goes for CS. And because I have so much extra move speed from the W and ninja tabs, I can look to run past the wave and E him. But unfortunately I was unable to hit him, but I'm still gaining an XP advantage. He's still missing some XP. As you see, I'm level 7 to 5, and if he were to go on me, he would get destroyed. But now, because my huge wave is about to crash onto his tower, I have a choice. I can look to rotate somewhere and look to make a play, because Dragon's up, their mid is pushing, and also Herald's going to be up soon, or I can look to poke him under tower. But because I'm versus Aurelia, who has Cold D-Blade, their poke's not going to be meaningful, and mid is very volatile this game. As you just saw from my camera pan, they're all ending each other. I choose to rotate mid. He basically gave me a warning sign that a mid rotate would be good because they're playing aggressively, and I capitalized and just drop ulti on her head. Now, if they were just high HP, they were just farming, of course I wouldn't have moved. I wouldn't have given up my state in the lane for that, but they're playing aggressively, which is basically an invitation for me to come and punish. So I don't want you to tunnel on, okay, I got my wave under tower, let's roam. You need to be looking at what's happening on the map. Well, you don't need to tunnel on the poke under tower. You need to be looking at the available options and choosing the most valuable one. And there my options were basically run to dragon, run to mid, or poke him under tower. And run to mid was the most valuable, and that's the one I took. Now, from this point in the game, my thought process is I missed out on my base because I roamed mid for killing the Ashe and I had to catch the wave under tower, so I was unable to get a base off. And I'm stuck in lane right now with a lot of money, so I wanted to crash a big wave in base or look to help my team on Herald. Now, this game, I made a mistake. I Did notice my Jarvan was on Herald, but I didn't think he needed me. I should have been rotating there way earlier. I should have been there before Irelia, but I make a mistake and he's able to get there first, which is my bad. But in the end, I do end up coming because I still view Herald as my responsibility. And also, I didn't have ult, so I was slightly hesitant to fight this because I'm just Boots Rumble with no ulti. But I'm still strong, so it's not a big problem. I should have been here earlier, and it ends up going pretty well. Not as good as it could have gone. I think Jarvan could have easily lived that. And yeah, this is not ideal for me because my wave is slow pushing towards him and I'm stuck in this fight. So if I were to be more aware of Herald, I would have fast pushed my wave and I would have been here faster. Which is my mistake, but it still ends up being fine because I kill their jungler and get out. But it's just something for you. You can learn from my mistakes, right? I'm not going to play, no one's going to play perfectly. But you can see what should have happened. I should have crashed that big wave that was in front of me and been at this Herald on time. Now from this point in the game, walking back to lane, I'm very strong. I've gotten 3 kills. I've gotten basically all the components of my Night Harvester and Ninja Tabs versus AD top jungle mid. I'm probably the strongest unit on the map right now, and I want to be using my strength to secure Herald. However, my Jarvan is playing hard bot side right now, so Herald is not an option. You can't solo Herald on Rumble, it'll take you forever. So I'm just looking to slow push my wave and poke Irelia as much as I can, and then I guess I fast push it here because I feel like I want to get vision done. And basically I just want to be poking her under tower and maintain control of Herald. So I look to staunch her on some CS, get vision down, because even though I can 1v2, it's a lot easier to play out a 1v2 scenario if you know the jungler's coming, because you can use your abilities accordingly. So now that I've spaced out his E, I look to get my heat back up. I don't want to run at him with 20 heat, looking to build it, and then look to punish him aggressively. So I try to pull the wave and look to make him come into me because he's been farming under tower too long now, and I'm unable to get meaningful poke because he has Vamp Scepter, so I want to keep a freeze so that I can not play for poke, I can play for an all-in. And then Kane's looking a bit too close to my Herald, so I ward it, and I'm trying to staunch it as best as I can and maintain it, but my Jarvan, he's not playing that well this game, which is going to happen in a lot of solo queue games. He's playing for Dragon instead, which of course, first Herald is a lot more valuable than Dragon most of the time, especially when playing with Rumble. And here I actually get a nice solo kill on the Irelia. And I managed to get this kill because I was spacing him quite well, which is one of the topics we talked about. I didn't stand still and trade auto attacks with him. I was kiting him around my ulti and E slows, because it's very easy to kite people out with Rumble, because you get move speed from your W, and you have so many slows in your kit, that it's very hard for anyone to stick onto you, especially early game. And now walking back to lane, I've gotten my Night Harvester spike, which is of course one of Rumble's biggest spikes, where I want to be looking to have as much impact in this game as possible from this point. And laning phase is just about over. It's almost 14 minutes, plates have almost fallen, so soon I want to be doing a lot more rotating than I've been doing and impact the map. I have rotated to mid and Herald a few times actually, but it's not enough right now. The rest of my team is doing quite poorly, so if I want to be the reason we win this game, I need to start having a higher impact with my lead. So I choose to not just hold this freeze anymore and play for the Aurelia solo kill. I'm looking more to push the wave and get amongst the action. And Aurelia chooses to roam here, which is of course not what Aurelia wants to do, but I think it ends up being okay for her, which good on him, but it's not that bad. I'm able to break plates, and we're going to use what we talked about earlier in the little tips. We're going to use the overheat to break tower, the extra attack speed, very good for breaking tower and getting plates, and Aurelia is basically wasting time. She might have gotten an assist or a kill in that mix, but it's definitely not what she wants to be, not giving XP and gold in this lane. So it actually ends up being better for me. And now I'm going to look to poke her if she tries to come back. And I notice she's quite low, so I'm going to play for the kill. Because I've got Ignite, so even though she has a lot of healing, it's not a problem. And then I just bash her down, which is the power of Night Harvester Ignite Spike. And of course, because I've got Ninja Tabs, the jungler can't do anything to me. It's just not going to happen. The difference in power is too high, especially versus Kayn, which is why you always want to be versing, not always, but ideally you want to be versing farming junglers as Rumble and not heavy pressure junglers. If that was a Rex Siren, at least with a couple kills there, I'm probably going to die, but because it's a non-form Kayn, there is no issue. So now coming out of the map, plates have fallen, which is a very important timer to keep in mind as Rumble, because that means if you make a play somewhere, your lane opponent's not going to get any plates. Even if they break the tower, it's nowhere near as punishing as if they got a lot of tower plates. So I use the timer to run mid outer base and look for a rare play, where I'm going to look to punish them for trying to break mid tower, because it was low. And I think my ulti was quite bad. Yep. I tried to hit both of them, where I should have just blocked off Ash's escape. I should have sent it up and made her run through it. I'm still able to kill their jungler. So it ends up being okay. But this was quite early on, I'm pretty sure, on me playing Rumble. Again, relearning the champ. So my ultis were not crisp this game, I'll say that. But the best way I should have chucked that ulti is to block off the Ash's escape and made her either run towards my team or run through the ulti. And now Aurelia has Blade of the Ruined King. So ideally, I can still beat her, but I've got no ulti, no ignite here, so I don't want to take the risk of all-inning her until she wastes her E. But then as soon as I see her waste E, I look to all-in. And of course I shoot an E out before I overheat, so I can have a second E. And then I just look to space her and not let her get auto attacks down. Pretty easy concept, but it just takes a bit of practice to get used to. Because it is quite easy to space people with the slow and the movement speed, but you're definitely going to have to practice it before you get quite good at it. And now I look to break tower with that kill. I'll speed it up. Don't want to be watching me bash a tower all day, because of course Rumble takes towers very slow, but that doesn't mean you can't. If you see a free opportunity to do it, you can take it. And I look to base here, even though I'm close to item. If I stay on the lane, if I stay on the map farming, I'm not going to be able to be a part of a play as fast as I want to be. If I waste time killing a Gromp and an extra wave to get my item spike, even though I'll be stronger at that time, that's a minute or a minute and a half where I'm farming and I'm not being a part of plays, which Rumble, that's very punishing, because you want to do as much work as you possibly can in the early game. Now, from this point in the game, I'm trying to be a part of as many fights as possible, because I'm so strong, but unfortunately my team gets caught out before I get there, which is solo queue. It's going to happen, definitely. I just want to make sure I'm a part of any future plays, so I don't let that happen again. So I'm rotating mid here and seeing if there's a fight on the back end, but my Carthus is flanking and gets caught out, which, of course it's solo queue, it's going to happen, but now that I see that, I decide that there's no way we can fight Dragon, so I choose not to give Aurelia a free tower. Because I know this dragon fight, we're probably going to lose 4v5, and if we give her a top tower and maybe even top tier 2 on the back end of it, the game will be over. So I choose to ping not to do dragon and stop this Aurelia from getting any advantage that she shouldn't get. And now, because I know they're doing dragon, the enemy team, I can play aggressively on this Aurelia, and if she goes anywhere near me, of course I'm up 3 levels, she's just going to get destroyed. But I think he still might, yeah, he still goes for it. And I managed to dodge his E and it's over. But to be honest, if he hit that E, I would have won, no question about it. But he would have done quite a bit of damage to me. As you can already see there, he did that much without hitting E. This matchup's quite tough, is basically what I'm trying to say. If you don't get a lead early game, you're going to struggle a lot. But luckily, Rumble's lane phase is so strong, you can get a lead early game, like I've done this game. And after the kill, I don't want to set my wave in a bad state, so I base now, and my team takes a fight. And luckily, they're actually able to win this fight. But I want to be a part of any follow-up fight that happens, because top wave's in. I don't want to be running top and pushing under tower and keeping Aurelia pinned. That's not Rumble's job. I want to be a part of fights. So I rotate to this fight that, even though it's already basically ended, I felt like there would be a secondary fight, which there was, and I was able to... What's that guy doing? I was able to secure the Soraka kill. And now they are going on me, going on my team, but luckily I think I'm probably able to survive this. Yeah. Damn, that was close. Okay. So basically the main point I'm trying to say is you want to be as part of as many fights as possible, but you can't be delusional about it. You're not going to be as a part of every fight. It's not going to happen. You have jobs to do. You have waves to answer, and you have 4 solo queue teammates who a lot of them are going to be making mistakes, so you're not going to be a part of every single fight. You just need to make sure the fights you are a part of are very favorable, and you don't lose much on the other side of it. Now from this point, I'm heading straight mid out of base, heading straight to Dragon, because I want to be a part of as many fights as possible, and my wave state is not urgent. So I'm hoping a Dragon fight breaks out, and I can finally get the 5v5 I've been chasing. And there was an angle to get Ashe there, but Jarvan didn't want to take it. He most likely used his combo on Crab, so that's fine. And now that his ulti's back up, I'm just hoping him or Rel hard engage. Like we talked about, hard engage champs are very good with Rumble because I can follow them up with my ulti without actually being there. And we're actually able to get the Ashe there. She's trapped in the Jarvan ult and the Rumble ult. She gets cooked down and I'm able to burn the rest of her team. Looking back there in hindsight, I should have placed the ulti on her and through her team. In the moment, I thought she was going to flash out of the Jarvan ult. I tried to predict it, but you're never going to do the perfect ulti every single time. You just need to review every ulti you do and try to improve on it. And there, I should have placed the ulti starting on her and going through her team, but I was still able to cook her whole team to a crisp anyway, so I'll let it slide this time. And now I'm looking to punish this Irelia. And of course, I'm so strong, I'm able to just beat her down with the passive. Now, from this point in the game, my main focus is that Baron has spawned. I'm 13-0, I'm at my strongest point. I'm not going to get stronger than this. My champion is going to start falling off eventually. Even though I've been destroying this Irelia, he will get to the point where he beats me. That's just the nature of Rumble. You're not going to beat side lane split pushes forever. So I push wave all the way in, which is pretty rare to be able to do on Rumble at this point. But because I've killed Irelia, I can get the wave all the way under tower. And normally I'd base here, but I'm able to get a whole item off Krugs, which is why I do it. And then I come out of map with Zhonya's with 3 items, and I'm spam pinging Baron. I want to fight this and secure this, because I don't want this game to go too long, where I'm the only strong member on my whole team. Everyone else is quite weak. If we don't get a noticeable advantage soon with my lead, the game's going to be quite tough. So I'm here out of base, pinging everyone. I want Akshan to come, I want Jarvan to come, and Akshan is unfortunately tilted due to what happened early game, which means he doesn't come to this fight. And I don't think I realized that in the time that he wasn't coming. I saw him rotating to red, I thought he'd come after, which is 100% my bad. There's no excuse to it. I should have been aware this was a 4v5 and back pinging, and it's actually not a great fight. And my ulti is just completely terrible. There's just nothing to it. That was just the worst ulti ever. And I'm able to end the fight with a Q Zhonya's actually, so I get quite a lot of damage down onto them. But yeah, I end up dying here, giving a shutdown, and this could have been a game-losing play by me. And I see it as my responsibility because I'm the one with the lead, which means I should be the one that carries the game. And the fact I didn't notice Akshan was tilt split pushing, it's on me. And I should have acted accordingly and backping my team, and then even if they still got caught, as long as I'm alive, we should be able to stop Baron. But this is completely my mistake, and we could have lost the game over it, but luckily I'm able to pull it back later on. Now from this point on, I want to do the same thing again, but I'm going to be more clear about it. So I really want to get Baron for my team, because I'm still strong. Even though I've died and given the shutdown, I'm not any weaker than I was before. I'm still able to carry the game at this point. I haven't been outscaled just yet because of how many kills I've got. So if I'm able to secure Baron for my team, then I can actually win this game when my whole team's doing poorly. So I'm spam pinging out of base, come on, do Baron, I've got my pink, I'm going to help control the area, and I just really want to make sure we get Baron early, because if we take too long, I'm going to get outscaled by Aurelia in the side lane, and then basically my champ will be weak later on, especially with champs like Soraka, who can just out-heal my damage later on, and I'm just spam pinging do Baron, and normally I wouldn't type, but I'm just making sure a mistake doesn't happen again, where I pinged and Akshan didn't come. I'm doing Baron and I'm saying Rel, Jarvan, engage on them, because Jarvan says he has no smite, and even if he had smite, I wouldn't want to take a 50-50 with this player who has not shown that, he's not shown that he's trustworthy. So I'm wanting to fight here if they come, and if they don't come, we just secure the Baron, which is what happens. Now from this point, we just want to reset and look to break as many structures as we can with our Baron. Unfortunately, my Kafs gets caught here, and I see it ahead of time with the Kayn running through the wall. So I rotate over, and luckily I'm able to make it a 1-for-1. So it's not as bad as it could have been, because now that it's a 4v4, we can still look to pressure. And we just need to break as many towers as we can with our Baron, and just keep increasing the lead we gained. Now, in this situation, we're playing 3 lanes, which is not ideal. Normally you want to play 2. But it's not a big problem because we see Irelia on the map. She's not going to be flanking us anytime soon. And then by the time she does rotate over to look to flank us, we can back out and play accordingly. And we're looking to secure Dragon here because, of course, I want to fight in this terrain because Rumble wants to fight in chokes and really get the most out of his ulti. And coming out of map, I'm heading straight there and looking to basically do that. And I'm pretty sure my Akshan gets caught here because we're playing 3 lanes momentarily, which means someone on your team has to get caught. That's the rule in solo queue if you play 3 lanes mid-game, or 3 lanes with Baron, sorry. someone's going to get caught, and that's what happens, and we're able to get dragon. Now I have to reset and answer this Irelia. Shouldn't have stopped my base in hindsight there. I was briefly worried about a fight, but it's not a big problem. I can get there on time. And I'm pretty sure here, yeah, this is another trick you can look to stop their Hex tier gate with your ulti, because you're not going to reach in time, and we're able to cook it down. And now I just want to reset my wave to even and then be a part of fights, because I don't want to have it hitting my tier 2 and losing XP and gold, but I don't want to be split pushing on Rumble. So I reset the wave to even. Now it's going to sit between the tier 1s, even state, and I'm going to rotate to be a part of any fight I can. And I'll slow it down a bit. I'm able to just zone the Swain out here and just block him from joining his team, and then cook his jungler down. If I was to push an extra wave top, I wouldn't have been a part of that, wouldn't have stopped the Swain, wouldn't have killed the Kayn, and maybe my team would have lost this fight. They were all looking pretty chunked. I didn't get a full overview of how the fight was going, but it's still the same concept where you don't want to be split pushing on Rumble. You want to be a part of as many fights as possible, as long as your wave is not losing anything. And now that it's even, it's not. I can be a part of this. And unfortunately, my team overdives. I don't want to ulti here because I know we won't kill Swain, and I don't want to bait my team into overcommitting, but it looks like they do anyway. So I just choose to back off, back ping them, and hope as little of them die as possible. I'm going to skip ahead a bit to a real sequence that you can learn from because the game got a bit chaotic the last few minutes. But the main point is I'm coming out of base here mid because top wave's not urgent, bot wave's not urgent, and Baron is spawning soon. Which of course that is the main way you can carry the game as Rumble, is fighting in the chokes around Baron and important dragons and carrying. And of course Baron is the next objective up. There's no important dragon anytime soon. Well, this dragon is our Dragon Soul, to be honest, but Baron is more important for us because if you think about it, if you get Baron and they get their first dragon, it's such a net positive, but if you get Dragon Soul and they get Baron, you're giving them such an important objective when you're probably going to get Dragon Soul in the game eventually. So I'm spam pinging Baron. I want everyone in this top side of the jungle and I want a hard engage on them. So I'm pinging, please go in Jarvan, please go in Rel, and unfortunately they don't see the angle, which is fine. I've done all I can. I'm at the position. I've pinged for them to go on. I've got the vision down. And they don't see it. That's just the reality of the situation. But we're still in a good position. We've got full control and we can win any fight. And I want to be playing for Baron. Now our Jarvan chooses to go for Dragon, which is just... I think these guys might be tilted, which it might be a good example for you guys to see, because in your solo queue games you probably have tilted teammates as well. But he's choosing to solo Dragon while we beat this Baron down. But the main point I wanted to show is that my thought process from this point coming out of the map was I need a secure Baron for my team, and that'll increase our chance of winning the game basically. So we'll finish off by going through the final sequence where I'm coming mid out of base, and I'm spam pinging my engage champs, my Rel and Jarvan, to just hard engage onto them. Because they overstayed for this tower, and if I'm able to get hard engage onto them with my ulti, we're actually able to kill them. And Jarvan, even though he misses every ability in the game, messes up his EQ, flash, messes up everything, ults the wrong target, it's still okay. We're able to trade kills, I'm able to get damage down, and I know I don't want to drop my ulti on just that Irelia, so I hold it for a better scenario, and we're just chasing these guys and allowing Akshan to break structures. Because even though Akshan's still split pushing now we're playing 2 lanes instead of 3, it's a lot better. There's a lot less chance of someone getting caught out. And I'm just trying to make sure we're a part of the follow-up for Akshan. And even though he's not a dive champion, he dives here, and I'm able to follow him up with my ulti, hit all 3 of them in the backline, cook them down, and we're finally able to win this painful game where everyone on my team was playing pretty poorly, including myself. I made a lot of mistakes, but I was able to do the main job of my champion. I was able to carry the early game, basically from stomping my lane. I was a part of a lot of early fights that I was a difference maker in them. And the main point was when Baron was spawned, I was forcing my team to take it. I was dragging them by their necks. They didn't want to take it, but I was able to spam ping, get full control, and secure we got Baron. And with that Baron, we're able to close the game where, in my opinion, if I didn't make any call at all, if I just walked around with my teammates trying to fight people, we definitely would have lost this game if I had no intention. So because I had the intention of being a part of every fight, staying up in tempo and securing Baron, we're actually able to win this game, even though I made a lot of mistakes. The next topic we're going to be covering is how to play against Rumble, and my first piece of advice for this topic is to build early magic resist. And this might seem pretty straightforward, build MR as an AP champ, but I don't see a lot of people doing it properly. If you're playing Renekton vs Rumble, for example, you might not want to rush your gold drinker like you do every game. And this matchup specifically, building more could be very beneficial, because Rumble's job is basically to win his lane and get an early advantage. But if you have to build one item that completely negates that and might even make you win the 1v1, that's a huge net win. But I don't want you guys to tunnel on that example specifically, because on champions like Jax and Camille, those are Divine Sundra champs, where delaying that item for 3,000 gold more of Mormortius is definitely not worth it. On champs like that, you'll just do the Mercury Treads, or you might even be able to sit on a Hex Shrinker if they have an AP jungler, but if you're just versus Rumble as a solo AP, then Merc Tread should be enough. And on champions such as Ornn, Sion, just tanks, you'll just do either a couple Null Magic Mantles, or maybe even a Negatron, and then you'll finish off your Mythic later on. The next point is play to make him ruin his wave, and there's a great example of the reverse of this, of me playing Rumble versus Darius in this guide, and I made him ruin his second wave, which made it come towards me and made it easy for me to freeze. And it's very easy to do this against inexperienced Rumble players, because if you walk up to the wave, they're probably just going to Q you and cook all their minions, do a little bit of damage to you, but completely ruin the integrity of their wave state, which means now it's quite easy for you to either let the wave crash under your tower, and then wave 3 will be not stacked, it won't be a problem, or you can even look to freeze it outside your tower in some games and look to actually get some trades down on the Rumble. Third point being maintain high HP in case you receive a gank. Because like we touched on before, if Rumble gets ganked, it's very hard for him to survive, and his main way of getting out of it is to play for the 1v2. But if you're extremely high HP with a bit of MR, he's not going to be able to 1v2 you, unless your jungler does something very stupid, which is like, could happen. But for the most part, if you're high HP and your jungler's coming in hot, you should be able to kill him quite cleanly. And the final point, which is quite important, be ready to punish him if he overheats or underheats. Now, a lot of people know how to punish Rumble when he overheats, because it's quite obvious. He's glowing red and shouting. It's quite obvious that's a timer to punish him. But underheating is a timer I don't see people punish well, because if Rumble is on 0 heat, if he lets it decay back to 0, and you go on him and he uses QWE, all 3 of those spells will be the weakened version. It won't be until his next set of cooldowns that he's able to actually fire any empowered spells at you, so that's 6 or 7 seconds where you can hit him for free, where his spells do very little damage. And not many people realize that. They play for the overheat but not the underheat, but the overheat has quite a lot of passive damage, so it's actually better to all in him when he's underheated. Up next, I'm going to be covering common mistakes on Rumble I see a lot of players make. And a big mistake I see them make is keeping every wave pushed without a plan in mind, because it's very easy to push every wave as it comes in as Rumble with your Q, because it does so much damage. However, that's not what you want to do, because if you're pushing wave after wave under tower, your lane opponent is farming for free, where if you're able to manipulate the wave in a way that allows you to look for an all-in instead, like I showed in multiple examples of the laning phase section, you can net not just a CS advantage, but kills as well. Because there's nothing more threatening than versing a Ignite Rumble who's got a freeze outside his tower and an HP advantage. Because if you walk up and ever get hit by an E, now you're liable to being flash on and all-in and beamed down with Nimbus Cloak, because this champion does so much damage early game. However, the range is not very long, so you don't want to be poking them under tower all game slowly and slowly. You want to be doing some poking, that's fine. However, you want to be making the wave come back to you and looking to all in them and actually play for kills, not just for CS lead. The next mistake I see a lot of people make is having a poor understanding of their role in the side lane. And that is because Rumble's side laning is so weak, a lot of people just don't want to go anywhere near it, which I understand, because that means you just want to be a part of as many fights as possible because your champ's so strong, but that doesn't mean you should be giving the side lane. If you win lane versus Fiora, and then you just group with your team for a couple minutes and she breaks the bot tier 2, she's all of a sudden back in the game. So what you want to be doing is pushing the wave not all the way to her tower, if she's there every time. You want to be resetting the wave to even, which is basically where the wave starts, right? Halfway between both the tier 1s. Reset your wave back to even, and then rotating either through the river or through your jungle to your team and looking to start a fight. And if no fight happens, you rotate back to the side. And the reason it's fine to reset it back to even most of the time, not every time, is because it's your side of the map. So if she chases you down the lane, you're pretty close to your tier 2 or tier 1 if it's still up, and if she plays too aggressively, you can even ping assistance and someone can come kill her if she's playing very disrespectfully. But for the most part, unless you're very far behind, because you should have a lead from early game, you should be able to reset your way back to even before you look to impact the map. And the final mistake is not closing out the game when ahead. Because of course Rumble, it's very easy to get ahead for the most part, as long as you're not getting punished by the jungler a lot, you should be able to win your lane. But being able to use that to close out the game cleanly is where the skill comes in. Because if you take too long to close it out, you're going to get dominated in the side lane eventually, or most of the champions you verse in top lane will outscale you. But if you are able to close it out, then you're going to climb. because if you're good at Rumble, you should win lane in most of your games, and if you're able to close out the game, then you're going to win a lot. But it's easier said than done. So the main way you close out games on Rumble is basically through Baron, because it's very hard to end a game without Baron or Elder, and Elder takes way too long. By the time Elder's up, the lane opponent you're versing is probably going to be a lot stronger than you. So if you're able to secure Baron at 20-something minutes, then you're able to end the game, and you're able to really use this champion to his limit. And the way you secure Baron is resetting the wave to even, or even having a time where you can push it, rotating to the Baron, having full control, and then you either start it, and when they walk into your full control, they walk into your full vision, you can completely chunk them down with your ulti, and they have to run through your ulti to reach the Baron and reach your team. And as usual, we're going to be going through the main takeaways, and for Rumble, there are 3 main ones. First one being, be a part of as many early fights and skirmishes as possible, and a good mentality I found to have when playing Rumble is to view Rift Herald as your responsibility. If you're able to get a ward on it before it spawns, keep your wave state pushed in, or your lane opponent chunked to a state where he's unable to join the fight, or if he does, he's just going to die, then you're playing your champion correctly. You should be able to be the reason your team gets Herald more often than not. Now, this won't happen every time. If the enemy mid-jungle is very fed, of course, they can probably get Herald if they want it. But if you're playing your champion correctly, more often than not, you should be able to secure Herald for your team. Next point being, you are weak in the side lane. However, it's still your responsibility. Just because your champ's not very good at side laning, it doesn't mean you should be giving the Fiora, the Jax, all these towers for free. You want to be resetting the wave to even before you look to impact the map, because if you don't, and the fight, even if it goes well, even if it goes bad, if it's not more favorable than what the enemy top laner gets, it's not going to be worth it. So an example of if you rotate to a fight, and it's a 2-for-2, and the reason it's a 2-for-2 is because you were there and you killed 2 of them. However, the enemy Fiora, who you beat in lane, breaks the tier 1, breaks the tier 2, pushes wave under tier 3, it's not worth it at all. He's going to come back on map so strong that you're not going to be able to deal with him in the side lane, and even though you're the difference maker in that fight to make it even, you didn't gain more than you lost. So for the most part, you should be resetting your wave to even before you look for a play, and making sure that play happens quickly so you're able to respond to side as fast as possible. But as long as you get more than you lose, it is fine. So if you get Baron and they get the tier 2, right, of course it's okay. But you really need to be making sure you get more than you lose, because it's very easy for a side laner to overpower Rumble if you make a lot of mistakes. And the final point being, play your lane with intention. It'll be very tempting on Rumble to just push the wave under tower and poke them and, just harass them under tower. But that might not be the best way to play your lane. In some matchups it is, matchups where you can look to dive them after you do enough poke, but in other matchups you're going to have to let the wave come back to you, freeze it outside your tower, and then look to kill them with the long lane. But that's not the only way to play. You don't have to only play for solo kills as Rumble. If you see an angle to push the wave under tower, rotate into the enemy jungler and kill him on, his second red buff or his raptors, that's good too, but that's having an intention. That's having a plan with what you want to do with each wave in the lane to gain an advantage. Alright everyone, I'm going to end it there, and for my next champion guide, I'm actually going to have a bit of a vote going in my Discord. So if there's any champion you'd like to see next, or if you want to be a part of that discussion, I recommend you joining, and who knows, your champ might get chosen next. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll see you guys next time.